In a city where shadows whisper secrets and even the cold can't freeze the truth, one man's quest for anonymity unraveled a web of lies darker than the winter night. Tom Hanks wasn't just a Hollywood icon here. He was a pawn in a game where memories could be rewritten, loyalties shattered, and a single cheeseburger held the key to survival. But when a desperate girl whispered, "It's poisoned," his escape became a fight for justice and a child's freedom. The screen cuts to a dramatic close-up of Luna's trembling hands clutching a locket. Want to uncover the conspiracy that forced Tom Hanks to become the hero he never asked to be? Smash that subscribe button and ring the bell, because this story isn't just about survival. It's about the lies we swallow and the truths we bleed for. The city of Chicago was never silent, not even in the dead of winter. The biting cold wind howled through the steel and glass canyons, carrying with it the faint hum of distant traffic and the occasional laughter of late-night revelers. Neon lights flickered above the streets, casting an eerie glow on the snow-dusted sidewalks. Steam rose from the grates where subway trains rumbled beneath the surface, mingling with the frosty air. It was a city alive with contradictions, glamorous yet gritty, bustling yet lonely. Tom Hanks walked briskly along the deserted street, his hands shoved deep into the pockets of his wool coat. His breath formed small clouds in the freezing air as he passed by shuttered storefronts and dimly lit alleys. Despite being one of Hollywood's most beloved stars, tonight he was just another face in the crowd. A man seeking solace in the anonymity of the urban sprawl. Chicago had always held a special place in Tom's heart. It wasn't just because of its iconic skyline or vibrant culture. It was the city's rawness that drew him in. There was something about the way the wind whipped through the streets, unrelenting and fierce, that mirrored his own inner turmoil. Tonight, however, he wasn't here to reflect on life or chase inspiration for his next role. He simply needed to escape, the flashing cameras, the endless interviews, the pressure to maintain his public persona. For once, he wanted to be invisible. As he turned a corner onto a quieter street, the cacophony of the city faded slightly. Here, the only sounds were the rhythmic clatter of his boots against the pavement and the distant wail of a siren. A few blocks away, a lone food cart stood under the pale yellow glow of a street lamp. The vendor, bundled up in layers of clothing, was flipping burgers on a small grill. The smell of greasy meat and toasted buns wafted through the air, tempting even the most disciplined passerby. Tom hesitated for a moment before approaching the cart. He hadn't planned to stop, but the warmth radiating from the grill seemed inviting amidst the icy chill. "One cheeseburger, please," he said, pulling out his wallet. The vendor nodded silently, his gloved hands deftly assembling the order. As Tom waited, he glanced around at the empty street. It was strange how peaceful it felt, despite the looming skyscrapers and the ever-present hum of the city. Just as the vendor handed him the paper-wrapped burger, a faint rustling sound caught Tom's attention. From the shadows of a nearby alley emerged a small figure, a girl no older than 10, her face smudged with dirt and her thin frame wrapped in tattered clothes. Her wide eyes locked onto Tom's, filled with a mixture of fear and desperation. She shuffled closer, her bare feet leaving imprints in the thin layer of snow. "Mister," she whispered, her voice trembling, "can you spare some change?" Tom frowned, torn between pity and caution. He had encountered countless beggars in his life, both in Los Angeles and during his travels, but there was something unsettling about this child. Perhaps it was the way she stared at him, as if trying to convey a message without words. Or maybe it was the fact that she appeared utterly alone in this vast, unforgiving city. "I don't have any cash," Tom replied gently, holding up his hands. "But here, take this." He offered her the freshly made cheeseburger, still warm in its wrapper. The girl hesitated for a brief second before snatching it from his hand. She clutched it tightly to her chest, as though afraid someone might take it away. For a moment they stood there in silence, the girl devouring the burger with surprising speed while Tom watched, unsure of what to do next. Then, just as he was about to turn and leave, she suddenly grabbed his sleeve. Her grip was surprisingly strong for someone so small. "Wait," she pleaded, her voice rising in urgency. "That burger. It's poisoned." Tom froze, his mind struggling to process her words. "What did you say?" "It's poisoned," she repeated, her eyes darting nervously toward the food cart. "They put something in it. You can't eat it." A chill ran down Tom's spine. Not from the cold, but from the sheer absurdity of her claim. Was this some kind of prank? Or was the girl delusional? He studied her face carefully, searching for any sign of deceit. But all he saw was genuine panic, etched into every line of her dirty tear-streaked cheeks. Before he could respond, the girl let go of his sleeve and backed away slowly, her gaze fixed on him as if expecting him to lash out. Then, without another word, she turned and bolted back into the darkness of the alley, disappearing as quickly as she had come. Tom stood there for a long moment, staring at the spot where she had vanished. His thoughts raced, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Could it be true? Was the burger really poisoned? Or was this just a desperate attempt by a hungry child to get more food? He glanced down at the cheeseburger in his hand, now feeling heavier than before. The vendor watched him curiously from behind the cart, seemingly oblivious to the drama that had unfolded. Tom forced a smile and nodded politely before walking away, the uneaten burger tucked securely under his arm. As he continued down the street, the encounter lingered in his mind like a stubborn shadow. Who was that girl? And why would she warn him about a simple cheeseburger? Something about her story didn't add up. But then again, nothing about this night felt ordinary. Little did Tom know, this chance meeting would set off a chain of events that would challenge everything he thought he knew about trust, morality, and the blurred lines between good and evil. The car ride back to the city was eerily silent, save for the rhythmic hum of the engine and the occasional flicker of streetlights passing by. Tom sat rigidly in the back seat, his mind racing as he processed everything Diana had revealed. Beside him, Luna remained unnervingly quiet, her small hands clasped tightly in her lap. She hadn't spoken a word since leaving the warehouse, but her wide, fearful eyes darted constantly between Tom and the front seat where Diana sat. Tom couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking into a carefully laid trap. Yet, something about Luna's demeanor tugged at his conscience. Despite her earlier deception, there was an undeniable vulnerability in her gaze. A flicker of innocence buried beneath layers of manipulation and fear. He resolved to play along for now, biding his time until he could uncover the truth. When they arrived at a sleek high-rise apartment building, Diana ushered them inside with an air of practiced authority. The lobby was immaculate, its marble floors gleaming under the soft glow of chandeliers. A uniformed doorman nodded respectfully as they passed, clearly accustomed to Diana's presence. Tom noted the subtle nods exchanged between her and the staff. It was clear she wielded significant influence here. Once inside her penthouse suite, Diana gestured for them to sit on a plush leather couch while she poured herself a glass of red wine. "Make yourselves comfortable," she said coolly, taking a slow sip. "We have much to discuss." Tom glanced at Luna, who shrank further into the cushions, her face pale and drawn. He turned back to Diana, his expression carefully neutral. "Start talking. What exactly is this project you mentioned?" Diana set her glass down and leaned forward, her piercing gaze locking onto his. "The drug we've developed, let's call it Erebus, is unlike anything the world has ever seen. It doesn't just erase memories, it rewrites them entirely. With it, we can reshape personalities, eliminate undesirable traits, even implant new skills or knowledge." Tom frowned, his skepticism evident. "And you tested this Erebus on your own daughter?" Her lips curled into a cold smile. "Not willingly, of course. Luna volunteered when she learned of its potential. She believed in the cause, to create a better future. Unfortunately, the process left her unstable, her memories fragmented, her loyalty wavering." Luna flinched at Diana's words, her hands trembling visibly. Tom noticed and reached out instinctively, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. To his surprise, she didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned slightly toward him, as if seeking comfort. "Enough," Tom said firmly, cutting off Diana mid-sentence. "If what you're saying is true, then Luna needs help, not punishment. Why bring me into this?" Diana's smile widened, though it never reached her eyes. "Because you're uniquely qualified, Mr. Hanks. Your reputation as a compassionate figure makes you the perfect candidate to earn her trust, and ours. Help us stabilize her, and we'll ensure she receives the care she deserves." Tom clenched his jaw, his instincts screaming that this was all a facade. Diana wasn't offering help, she was bargaining. But for now he needed to tread carefully. "Fine," he said after a pause. But I have conditions. I want full access to her medical records. And no more lies. Diana raised an eyebrow, clearly amused by his audacity. Very well. You'll get what you need. But remember, trust is a two-way street. As Diana excused herself to retrieve the documents, Tom turned to Luna, his voice dropping to a whisper. Listen to me, he said urgently. I don't know what's going on, but I'm going to protect you. Do you understand? Luna hesitated, tears welling up in her eyes. You shouldn't have come, she murmured, her voice barely audible. She'll hurt you too. Before Tom could respond, Diana returned, holding a thick folder filled with papers and photographs. She handed it to him with a flourish, her expression unreadable. Everything you need to know is in there. Study it carefully. Tom accepted the folder, his fingers brushing against its worn edges. As he flipped through the pages, his stomach churned. The documents detailed countless experiments conducted on Luna, each one more invasive than the last. There were notes on memory suppression, behavioral conditioning, and psychological evaluations that painted a harrowing picture of her ordeal. But amidst the clinical jargon, one detail stood out. A single handwritten note scrawled in the margins. It read, "Subject shows signs of resistance. Further testing required." Tom's heart sank. Whatever Luna had endured, it was far worse than he'd imagined. And yet, despite everything, she had managed to resist, to fight back in her own way. That realization ignited a spark of determination within him. He wouldn't let Diana, or anyone else, continue to exploit her. Over the next few days, Tom played the part of a reluctant ally, feigning cooperation while secretly gathering information. He spent hours poring over the documents, piecing together fragments of Luna's shattered past. Meanwhile, he kept a close eye on her, watching for any signs of rebellion or clarity breaking through the fog of manipulation. One evening, as they sat together in the living room, Luna finally spoke. "Why are you helping me?" she asked softly, her voice tinged with suspicion. "Everyone else only wants to use me." Tom met her gaze, his expression sincere. "Because I believe everyone deserves a chance to be free. Even if they've made mistakes, even if they've been used. You're not alone in this, Luna. Not anymore." For the first time since meeting her, Luna smiled, a faint, hesitant curve of her lips, but it was enough to remind Tom why he had chosen this path. No matter how tangled the web became, he would find a way to untangle it. For Luna's sake, and for the sake of justice. The tension in the air was palpable as Tom and Luna sat together in the penthouse suite, their movements cautious and deliberate. Diana had left them alone for the evening, claiming she had business to attend to, but Tom knew better. Every corner of the apartment felt like it was under surveillance. Cameras hidden behind paintings, microphones embedded in furniture. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, analyzed, every word and gesture scrutinized for weakness. Luna seemed to sense his unease. She glanced around nervously, her small frame rigid with tension. "She's always watching," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Even when she's not here." Tom nodded grimly. "I know, but we'll find a way out of this. Together." Before Luna could respond, the sound of high heels clicking against marble echoed through the hallway. Moments later, Diana swept into the room, her presence commanding and icy. She carried herself with the confidence of someone who knew they held all the cards. In her hand was a sleek tablet, its screen glowing faintly in the dim light. "Good evening," she said smoothly, taking a seat across from them. "I trust you've settled in comfortably?" Tom forced a tight smile. "As comfortable as one can be under the circumstances." Diana chuckled softly, her eyes glinting with amusement. "You're a clever man, Mr. Hanks. I admire that. But let's not play games, shall we? You've had time to review the documents. What do you think?" Tom hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "It's extensive. And deeply troubling. If what you're saying is true, then Luna's condition is far more complex than I initially realized." Diana nodded approvingly, though there was no warmth in her expression. "Precisely. Which is why your cooperation is essential. We need someone with your empathy to help stabilize her, to guide her back to us." Tom clenched his fists beneath the table, his anger simmering just below the surface. He wanted nothing more than to confront her, to expose her cruelty and manipulation. But he knew that doing so now would only put Luna in greater danger. For now he had to play along. "I'll do what I can," he said finally, his tone measured. "But I need guarantees. No more experiments. No more lies." Diana tilted her head, studying him intently. "You have my word," she replied, though her smile suggested otherwise. "Now let's discuss the next steps." As Diana began outlining her plans, Tom noticed something peculiar. A faint red light blinking near the ceiling. A camera. His mind raced as he considered the implications. Was this an opportunity or a trap? Either way, he needed to act quickly. Under the guise of stretching, Tom subtly shifted his position, angling himself slightly toward the camera. He made eye contact with Luna, giving her a barely perceptible nod. It was a risk, but he hoped she understood the signal. Moments later, chaos erupted. The door burst open and several armed men stormed into the room, their weapons trained on Tom and Luna. Diana rose calmly from her seat, her expression unfazed. "Gentlemen," she said coolly, gesturing toward Tom, "our guest has been less cooperative than anticipated. Please escort him to the holding facility." Tom stood slowly, raising his hands in surrender. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Luna trembling, tears streaming down her face. "Don't worry," he mouthed silently, hoping she would stay strong. As the men led him away, Tom caught a glimpse of Diana watching him with a smug smile. She thought she had won, that he was just another pawn in her game. But she underestimated one crucial factor: his determination to protect Luna at any cost. The holding facility was located deep within the building, accessible only through a series of secure elevators and corridors. The walls were lined with reinforced steel, and the air smelled faintly of antiseptic. Tom was ushered into a small windowless room and handcuffed to a chair. Despite the grim surroundings, he remained calm, his mind racing with possibilities. Hours passed, or perhaps it was only minutes. Time seemed to blur in the sterile confines of the room. Finally, the door creaked open, and a familiar figure stepped inside. It wasn't Diana, as he had expected, but a man dressed in a police uniform. His badge gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights. "Mr. Hanks," the man said, his voice clipped and professional. "We need to talk." Tom raised an eyebrow, feigning surprise. "Officer? Am I under arrest?" The man smirked, pulling out a pair of handcuffs. "Not exactly. Let's just say we're here to ensure your compliance." Diana's orders. Tom's heart sank. So the police were involved after all, and they weren't on his side. This was worse than he had feared. But even as despair threatened to overwhelm him, a spark of defiance ignited within. He wouldn't give up, not while Luna still needed him. Whatever it took, he would find a way to turn the tables on Diana and her accomplices. For now, though, he played the part of the defeated captive, allowing the officer to lead him deeper into the labyrinthine facility. Little did they know, their actions were setting the stage for a confrontation that would change everything. The sterile walls of the holding facility seemed to close in around Tom as he sat handcuffed to the cold metal chair. His mind raced, piecing together fragments of the puzzle that had brought him here. Diana's calculated manipulation, Luna's cryptic warnings, and now the involvement of corrupt law enforcement. It was all part of a meticulously orchestrated plan. But one thing was certain: he couldn't face this alone. Summoning every ounce of composure, Tom leaned back in his chair, feigning resignation. "You know," he said aloud, his voice calm but tinged with defiance, "this isn't how you win someone's cooperation." The officer guarding him smirked, clearly unimpressed. "Save the theatrics, Mr. Hanks. You're not in a movie anymore." Tom chuckled softly, though his eyes remained sharp. "Maybe not. But even in real life, people have allies." The comment seemed to unsettle the officer slightly, though he quickly masked it with a sneer. "Your friends won't find you here. This place is off the grid." Tom didn't respond. Instead, he focused on the faint hum of electricity running through the room, searching for any sign of surveillance. He knew Marcus would be watching, waiting for the right moment to act. All he needed to do was buy time. Meanwhile, miles away in a dimly lit safe house, Marcus paced anxiously. The former intelligence operative had spent years honing his skills in covert operations, but this mission felt different. It wasn't just about dismantling an organization or exposing corruption, it was personal. Tom was more than a friend, he was family. And Luna, she was a child caught in a web far beyond her control. Marcus glanced at the array of monitors before him, each displaying live feeds from hidden cameras planted throughout Diana's network. One screen showed Tom sitting calmly in the holding room, while another revealed Luna locked in a separate cell, her small frame curled into a ball. Her eyes were closed, but her trembling hands betrayed her fear. "We need to move fast," Marcus muttered to himself, tapping furiously on a keyboard. "If we don't get them out soon, Diana will break them both." He pulled up a blueprint of the facility, studying its layout with military precision. Every corridor, every security checkpoint, it all had to be accounted for. Then with a deep breath, he activated the encrypted communication device strapped to his wrist. "Tom," he whispered, knowing his voice would transmit directly to a tiny earpiece concealed within Tom's jacket collar. "Can you hear me?" A flicker of recognition crossed Tom's face, though he kept his expression neutral. Loud and clear, he replied under his breath. "Good. Here's the plan. I've hacked into their system. In exactly 3 minutes, I'll trigger a power outage. Use the chaos to disable your guard and head to Sector B. That's where Luna is being held." Tom nodded imperceptibly, his heart pounding with anticipation. "Understood. What about Diana?" "She's in the main control room. Once we secure Luna, we'll deal with her. Just focus on staying alive until then." Back in the holding room, the seconds ticked by like hours. Tom's muscles tensed as he prepared for action. When the lights finally flickered and died, plunging the facility into darkness, he sprang into motion. With a swift kick, he knocked the chair over, using its weight to slam into the unsuspecting officer. The man crumpled to the ground, unconscious. Freeing himself from the handcuffs, Tom grabbed the officer's weapon and darted toward the door. The emergency backup lights cast an eerie red glow over the corridors, illuminating clusters of panicked guards scrambling to restore order. Staying low and moving swiftly, Tom navigated the maze-like structure, following Marcus's directions to the letter. When he reached Sector B, he found Luna huddled in a corner, her wide eyes filled with terror. "It's me," he whispered urgently, crouching beside her. "We're getting out of here." Luna hesitated, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you." "There's nothing to apologize for," Tom assured her, his voice gentle but firm. "Just trust me, okay? We'll fix this together." As they made their way back toward the rendezvous point, they encountered resistance, a group of armed guards blocking their path. Tom raised his weapon, his instincts kicking in. But before he could fire, a series of explosions rocked the building, sending debris flying in all directions. Through the smoke and chaos, Marcus appeared, wielding a high-powered rifle. "Move," he shouted, covering their retreat. Together, the trio fought their way through the crumbling facility, narrowly avoiding capture at every turn. By the time they reached the extraction point, a secluded cabin deep in the woods, they were battered but alive. Inside the cabin, Marcus wasted no time setting up a makeshift command center. "We're not safe yet," he warned, pulling up satellite images of the surrounding area. "Diana's forces will regroup. We need to strike first." Tom nodded, his resolve stronger than ever. "Then let's finish this." As dawn broke over the horizon, the trio devised their final plan. Using data stolen from Diana's servers, they identified the location of the organization's primary research lab, a heavily fortified compound hidden beneath a pharmaceutical company's headquarters. "This is where it ends," Marcus declared, his tone grim but determined. "Once we destroy the lab, there'll be no turning back." Tom glanced at Luna, who sat quietly in the corner, clutching the locket around her neck. Despite everything she had endured, there was a newfound strength in her gaze, a spark of defiance that hadn't been there before. "You ready for this?" Tom asked softly. Luna nodded, her voice steady. "For my mom, and for us." With their resolve solidified, the trio set out once more, prepared to confront the shadows that had haunted them for so long. Little did they know, the greatest test of all awaited them, not in the form of weapons or traps, but in the choices they would have to make. The cabin stood isolated in the heart of a dense forest, its weathered wooden walls blending seamlessly with the surrounding trees. It was the perfect location for a trap, a place where shadows could conceal both predator and prey. Tom, Marcus, and Luna had spent hours preparing for this moment, knowing it would be their final confrontation with Diana and her organization. Yet, as they finalized their plans, an uneasy silence hung in the air. Each of them carried the weight of what was to come, unsure if their gambit would succeed, or if it would cost them everything. "Remember," Marcus said quietly, breaking the tension, "this isn't just about survival. It's about giving Luna a chance to reclaim herself." Tom nodded, his gaze fixed on the young girl sitting by the window. Luna's hands trembled as she clutched the locket around her neck, her eyes distant but resolute. Over the past few days she had begun to piece together fragments of her shattered memories, flashes of her mother's cold smile, the sterile walls of the lab, the suffocating feeling of being controlled. But there were still gaps, dark voids that refused to yield their secrets. Tonight, they hoped to fill those gaps not with force but with truth. As dusk fell, the first signs of movement appeared outside. Shadows darted between the trees, their shapes distorted by the flickering light of distant torches. Diana's forces had arrived. "They're here," Marcus whispered, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. He handed Tom a small device, a decoy designed to mimic the signal from Luna's locket. "This will buy us time. Use it wisely." Tom took the device and slipped it into his pocket, his fingers brushing against the cool metal. "Let's do this." The ambush came swiftly and without warning. Armed men stormed the cabin, their weapons trained on the trio. Diana stepped forward, her expression calm but tinged with triumph. "You didn't think it would be that easy, did you?" she asked, her voice dripping with mockery. Tom forced a smirk, playing the part of the defiant captive. "Easy? No. Worth it? Absolutely." Diana's smile faltered for a brief moment, but she quickly regained her composure. "Take them," she ordered, gesturing toward her men. "Separate them. We'll deal with each one individually." As Tom and Marcus were dragged away, Luna was left alone with Diana. The room grew eerily quiet, save for the crackling of the fireplace. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Diana knelt beside her daughter, her tone softening. "You've been through so much, my dear," she said, reaching out to touch Luna's cheek. "But it's not too late to come back to me. Together, we can finish what we started." Luna flinched, tears streaming down her face. "I don't want to hurt anyone anymore." Diana's expression hardened. "Sometimes hurting others is necessary. You'll understand when you're older." Before Luna could respond, the sound of gunfire erupted outside. Chaos ensued as Marcus and Tom launched their counterattack, using the distraction to overpower their captors. In the midst of the commotion, Luna seized her chance. She grabbed a nearby laptop containing critical data on Erebus and bolted toward the exit. "Stop her!" Diana shouted, her voice laced with panic. Tom intercepted the guards pursuing Luna, engaging them in a fierce struggle. His movements were fueled by desperation, every blow aimed at protecting the girl who had become like family. Meanwhile, Marcus fought his way to the control panel, initiating a self-destruct sequence that would destroy the lab and all evidence of Diana's experiments. As the countdown began, Diana cornered Luna near the cabin's entrance. Her eyes burned with a mixture of anger and sorrow. "You don't know what you're doing," she hissed, grabbing Luna's arm. "Without me, you're nothing." Luna hesitated, her resolve wavering. But then, amidst the chaos, she heard Tom's voice echoing in her mind. "Everyone deserves a chance to be free." Summoning every ounce of courage, she pushed Diana aside and ran toward safety. Outside, Tom and Marcus awaited her, their faces etched with relief. But before they could escape, Diana emerged from the cabin, clutching a vial of Erebus. Her eyes locked onto Luna, filled with a mix of love and despair. "I'm sorry," she whispered, smashing the vial against the ground. A cloud of toxic gas enveloped her, shielding her from view as the cabin exploded behind her. "No!" Luna screamed, collapsing to her knees. Tears streamed down her face as the realization hit her. Her mother was gone, sacrificing herself to protect her. Tom knelt beside Luna, pulling her into a tight embrace. "She loved you," he murmured, his voice choked with emotion. "In her own way, she gave you the freedom she couldn't find for herself." As the flames consumed the remains of the cabin, the trio stood in silence, watching the inferno burn away the remnants of Diana's empire. The battle was over, but the scars it left behind would linger for years to come. Marcus broke the silence, his tone somber yet hopeful. "We need to move. They'll send reinforcements soon." Tom nodded, helping Luna to her feet. "Let's go home." The aftermath of the explosion left the forest eerily silent, save for the crackling of embers and the distant hum of approaching sirens. Tom, Marcus, and Luna stood amidst the wreckage, their faces illuminated by the flickering glow of the flames. The weight of what had transpired hung heavily in the air, a mixture of relief, grief, and uncertainty. Luna clutched the locket around her neck, her hands trembling as she stared at the burning remains of the cabin. Her mother's final act of sacrifice replayed in her mind like a haunting melody, each note resonating with both love and loss. Diana had been a villain, a manipulator, a woman consumed by ambition, but she had also been a mother who, in her own twisted way, had loved her daughter enough to give her freedom. She didn't have to do that, Luna whispered, her voice breaking. She could have run. Tom knelt beside her, his expression filled with quiet empathy. Sometimes people make choices we don't understand. But that doesn't mean they didn't care. Marcus approached cautiously, his tone pragmatic but gentle. We need to leave. The authorities will be here soon and we can't risk being caught. Tom nodded, helping Luna to her feet. Let's go home. The journey back to Chicago was long and somber, the trio riding in silence as the first light of dawn painted the horizon in hues of gold and pink. When they finally arrived at Tom's apartment, Luna hesitated at the threshold, her eyes wide with apprehension. Is this where I'll stay? She asked softly, her voice tinged with uncertainty. Tom smiled warmly, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. For as long as you want. This is your home now. Luna nodded slowly, stepping inside. The apartment was modest but welcoming, its walls adorned with photographs from Tom's illustrious career. Yet, amidst the accolades and memories, there was an undeniable sense of emptiness, a void that Luna's presence seemed to fill. Over the following weeks, Tom and Marcus worked tirelessly to piece together the evidence they had salvaged from the lab. The data Luna had stolen contained damning proof of Diana's experiments, records of illegal trials, manipulated subjects, and the devastating effects of Erebus. With Marcus's connections, they anonymously leaked the information to investigative journalists, ensuring that Diana's organization would be dismantled once and for all. But while justice was served in the public eye, the personal toll remained. Luna struggled to reconcile the fragmented memories of her past with the life she was building with Tom. Each night, she would wake up screaming, haunted by visions of her mother's final moments. And each time, Tom would sit beside her, offering comfort without judgment. One evening, as they sat together on the couch, Luna finally spoke. Do you think I'm bad, Mr. Hanks? Because of what I did, because of who my mom was. Tom turned to her, his gaze steady and kind. No, Luna. You're not bad. You were used by your mother, by her organization. But none of that defines who you are. What matters is what you choose to do next. Luna looked down at the locket in her hands, its surface cool against her skin. Inside it was a tiny vial containing the last remnants of Erebus, a reminder of the darkness she had escaped. She considered throwing it away, but something stopped her. Perhaps it wasn't just a symbol of pain, perhaps it was also a testament to survival. I want to keep it, she said quietly. Not because I forgive her, but because I won't forget. Tom nodded, understanding the complexity of her decision. Then keep it. Just remember, you're stronger than anything that's happened to you. As days turned into weeks, Luna began to heal. She enrolled in school, made friends, and even started writing stories inspired by her experiences. Tom watched her transformation with pride, knowing that she had found a way to turn her scars into strength. Yet, despite the progress, there were still unanswered questions. Who had funded Diana's research? How many others had been subjected to Erebus? And most importantly, how could they ensure that such atrocities never happened again? It was during one of these late-night conversations that Marcus voiced his concerns. This isn't over, he said grimly, sipping a cup of coffee. Diana may be gone, but her legacy lives on. There are others out there, people who believe in her vision. Tom sighed, running a hand through his hair. Then we'll keep fighting. For Luna. For everyone she couldn't save. Months later, Tom received a package in the mail. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a letter written in Diana's elegant handwriting. It read, to whoever finds this. If you're reading this, then I failed or succeeded, depending on how you look at it. My work was never about control, it was about freedom, the kind that comes from rewriting the rules. But somewhere along the way, I lost sight of what truly mattered, my daughter. Luna, if you're alive, know that I wanted more for you than I could ever give. Live freely. Love fiercely. Be better than me. Tom folded the letter carefully, his heart heavy with conflicting emotions. He handed it to Luna, who read it in silence. When she finished, she looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. She really did love me, Luna murmured, clutching the letter to her chest. Yes, Tom replied softly. She did. In the end, the story of Tom and Luna became a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. They had faced unimaginable darkness, yet emerged stronger, not because they were perfect, but because they dared to embrace the gray areas between good and evil. And as they stood together on the balcony of Tom's apartment, watching the city lights twinkle like stars, Luna smiled, a faint, hesitant curve of her lips. But it was enough to remind them both that even in the deepest shadows, there is always hope.